Hello, everybody. The Nameless Narcissist here once again. A simple man diagnosed with NPD, trying to give you the facts of narcissistic personality disorder and tell you what goes on in my head. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on social media: Twitter, TikTok, what's the other one? Instagram. Uh, keep in mind I'm no clinician, so I can only speak to my own experiences. Anyways, so I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about what my course of therapy looked like. I've touched on it before, but like it was a very convoluted process. And I'm going to talk about my second time as well. I'll talk about both of them actually, because the first time was after I forcibly was made to go to not inpatient, outpatient therapy because of my anger issues when I was 16. And I remember at first I was just like, I don't know. I was like expecting them to just kind of do the work, like pry at me and shit. And like they were like, well, why are you here? What do you want to talk? Yada yada. I'm like, aren't you supposed to tell me that? What are we like? Why am I here if you're not going to just fix me, right? It was weird because I was a kid. I had no idea how therapy works, and I was like, well, I don't want to talk about like my issues at school, at home, and stuff. Those aren't important enough to talk about. And he's like, that's why you're here. And I was like, what? I thought we were talking. I don't know. I guess I didn't really know what I expected. I guess I thought he was going to like lobotomize me or something. You know what I mean? Yep. That reminds me. One of my friends brought up that like, oh, I should have a name for the people in my community. I'm like, that feels weird for mental health channel. But like, what if we called ourselves lobotomizers? I think that'd be hilarious. We're not actually doing that. But anyways, but yeah. As time wore on, I kind of got more used to the process of how therapy worked. I started being like, my friends are idiots. They envy me, blah, blah, blah. Started showing that shit very blatantly. And during this time, I also started like reading into, because like based on how he was reacting, I kind of understood that like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but there's something wrong. So I started like reading a lot of stuff about pathologies and everything. Because at first, I kind of suspected, because I knew that like I didn't feel empathy, or I didn't like get sad when people died. So I was like, maybe I am a sociopath. Thanks, Dad. Obviously I wasn't, but but like I kept reading about stuff, and I saw the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, and I was like, there's no way that's me. I am that smart. I do deserve these things. I took the NPI, and like not the NPI. It was wait, narcissistic personality inventory. Yeah. So yeah, the NPI, and I like scored like fucking at the top. Which, keep in mind, the narcissistic personality inventory is not a good measure of pathological narcissism. It was designed to measure healthy narcissism, actually. So, I mean, it can get kind of dysfunctional even at, in quotes, healthy narcissism, but it's not a good diagnostic tool to diagnose narcissistic personality disorder, because there's a lot of people with narcissistic personality disorder that are like, very self-conscious, very low self-esteem. I mean, almost all of us are. Anyways, so I was kind of like, oh wait, this thing, and as I did more research into it, I read about hiding the self and stuff, and I was like, oh my god, because I told one of my friends that like when I was like 14 that I felt like I like forgot who I really was and shit like that, and so I actually brought it up with my therapist, being like, do you think there's a possibility I have personality disorder? And like he got like excited. I guess he didn't know how to bring it up, and brought out the diagnostic criteria, and he read them out, and he was like, it fits you to a T, doesn't it? I'm like, yeah, I guess so. And I just kind of ignored it for a while. I didn't really think much of it. Afterwards, I was kind of like, I was like 16. There's no fucking way I'm a pathological narcissist. I just am that good. I know my worth. I'm smarter than everybody, like a narcissist does. Eventually, time wore on, and I went through so fast forward from that, I didn't enter I very briefly went into a counseling session when I was in college because I was like very, very in a bad spot. But I went there and I just found it useless, and I just lied to her and shit. She was like, I don't know why you're here. You like, and I think she recognized just like the disconnect, and I was just doing it because people expected me to, and I just wanted to make myself look impressed. Oh, I'm working on myself, guys, and like stuff like that. I dropped out of that eventually. I just stopped going. A couple years passed. I started dating this girl, cheat on her, emotionally at least, and then I got involved with the girl I emotionally cheated on her with, and I was like, and it went poorly. I started thinking, why the fuck did I do that? Why did I do that? The mantra of my life. But because of my relationship with that girl, she was also like traumatized as a child. So like it got me like thinking about like my childhood and shit. And I was like, maybe that wasn't as normal as I thought. So I started really, I just decided I was like, I should probably go to therapy and work through that shit because obviously it's affecting me in a way that I'm not sure of. So I'm in therapy and I'm like, I'm basically like, I'm having issues, fix them. And I was just like, and she was like, okay, well, I guess we need some background information. I tell her a bunch of shit. Then proceed to lie to her for 2 years. Like, it was so funny because, like, I expected treatment to work even though I was, like, basically hiding myself. And just telling her what I knew the healthy answers were without actually committing to. And it would be so bizarre, too, because I bet from her end. Because we would talk about something in therapy, and I'd be like, yeah, I know, this is what I should do. And then like I'd leave therapy and I wouldn't do the thing that she said, or that we came to the agreement that was the right way to do it. And then she would just be kind of bewildered, being like, well, "Why didn't you?" And I was like, "Oh." Eventually, eventually I did bring up that old diagnosis, and she was like, "Oh, I don't really see that." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "Okay." And that was like 6 months in, maybe. Eventually, and this goes on for a little bit. I'm not going to say what, but at one point I did need an excuse for why I was being so fucking erratic. And I knew the like diagnostic criteria for some things, so I kind of like off like the top of my head, and I was like, oh, these are the things I'm experiencing. And she was like, oh, well, it sounds like this disorder. I'm not going to say what it was. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I could tell my friends like, oh yeah, I got diagnosed with this thing. I actually did have it, but as it turns out, but you know, it was. I think she said later that she like knew that I had it before I even brought it up like that, and she knew that I was doing it in a very obvious way during that session. Which I was like, ah, fuck, bitch. Um, eventually, I bring up like, I want to know what I'm diagnosed with, basically. And this was like 2 years in. Wait, actually, something happened before this. I had like a slip up where I was kind of like, I forget what I was complaining. I was complaining about some of my friends and how like they didn't get what I experienced and stuff like that. She was kind of nodding along, and like I wasn't even thinking about it, and I was just going on and on. And I was like, well, I guess what can I expect? They're all so fucking stupid. And she's like, wait, what? And I was like, I mean, they think that they're like me, but I mean, fucking come on, look at me, like see what I have to say, see how smart I am and attractive. Like I outpace them in every possible way. And she's like her jaw like fucking is dropping and like eyes wide, and I'm like, and I remember it was about the end of the session, and I like stood up. I was like, ah, that felt fucking good, and she was like, oh well, yeah, I'm humbled, and I was like, are you fucking mocking me? I didn't say it quite like that, but you know, I come back and it feels like the air in the fucking room changed. It wasn't like a bad thing really. I was just like a lot more open at that point about what my cognitions actually were and not just trying to say the things that I knew would appease her. And eventually, like, after some time went on, I was like, so she did, like, during the course of this, it was funny because she did point out, I remember, like, over the course of a couple of things, she was like, oh, it seemed, like, she brought up some borderline traits, and I was like, interesting. And I was like, okay. And I bring up to her, I'm like, so I'm really curious, what do you think my diagnosis is? And she was like, well, let's go through some of these symptom criteria over here. And we went through NPD, and I was like, yep, I guess so. And she was like, oh, well, there's that. And she also pointed out that I had some borderline antisocial traits, and it's fine, whatever. And so then I could kind of handle my recovery a little bit better since I knew, like, okay, these are my mechanisms. Spent a lot of time researching it after that. I scoured through shit trying to understand this. And at this point in therapy, we're at like a pretty good level, I guess. She says even to this day that she always like couldn't she always knew she didn't know why, but she always knew something was off. That like I wasn't like that like I was playing some kind of game with her, I guess. And it was kind of because it was interesting because I took something of a almost sadistic pleasure out of like frustrating her attempts to treat me. I was like, well, because if I admitted that something she did was right, then that would be being submissive to her. And even now though, I still kind of view her as kind of like a tool to work on myself. Sorry, as opposed to a living, breathing person that I have a relationship with. Like, to this day, she'll be like, oh, well, like, I know you don't view this for a relationship because in the past I've been like, this isn't a fucking relationship. I'm paying you to fucking, like, figure me out and help me. This isn't a relationship, this is a transaction. If I wasn't paying, you wouldn't be helping me. How's that a relationship? And she fights me on that sometimes, but, whatever. I also I want to point out, like, I don't think I could deal with having a male therapist nowadays. Like that just feels weird. Telling a dude about my problems, and I know that's just fucked up and not actually accurate or anything. I just couldn't imagine it. That's why I'm 40 and shit right there. Fucking fuck. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this video. Follow me on shit, like, comment, subscribe. Y'all have a good day. Take your fucking meds.